Quick review tutorial for Thinkcentral lesson 3.7. They're asking us to compare addition with multiplication. So it's fairly straightforward if you just unpack these. When you add up fractions, you're adding up two parts to get a greater amount. But if you're taking a part of a part, you end up with a smaller part. So here you have 1/5 here and 1/5 here, and they're taking 3/5, they're taking 3/5 of that fifth, and they're taking 3/5 of that fifth. So you're taking a smaller part of each fifth, and that ends up with a smaller part. So which problem has a greater answer? Of course, addition would have a greater answer, because you're taking a part of a part, and that's smaller part. If you're taking traditionally multiplication, you have a greater answer with multiplication, but that's when you're involving whole numbers. You're getting more sets of that whole number, so that is why it's greater. But fractions, part of a part, smaller part. Same concept here. When you add up fractions, you end up with a larger number. When you take a part of a part, you're taking 1/8 of 4/5. So that means you're only taking, if you had 4/5, and you're taking only 1/8 of that 4/5, that means you're taking only one part of this whole thing. So you're ending up with a much smaller part. So what's going to have a greater answer? The addition is going to have a greater answer, because you're getting a larger number. Even though it's a fraction, you're getting a larger fraction than here. And B is a smaller number because it's a part of a part. So the correct answer is A. Unpacking this, tell whether the answer will be less than or greater than the number in the red. Well, if you have a whole number, A is a whole number, and you're taking a smaller, you're taking away something, you're subtracting from a whole number, you're going to end up with a smaller part. So the answer to this question, the difference will be smaller than A. And if you want to just substitute a simple number in here, 2 minus 1, is the answer going to be greater or less than 2? It's going to be less than the 2, because you're taking away a number from that number. Likewise, if you are adding numbers together, if you're adding two numbers together, you're going to end up with a greater number. Again, let's just do it. Let's say you had a half plus a fourth. You're going to end up with a number greater than a half, because you're adding a fourth to it. And if you think about a number line, here you have 0 and 1. Here's a half. You're going to be adding something to that, so the number is going to be greater than. And we already talked about this, but if you multiply by a fraction, you're taking a part of a part, and so that number will be smaller than either of the factors that you're multiplying together. Part of a part equals smaller part. So Amber, a snail, is moving can move 7/8 of the yard in 1 hour. So here is my 7/8 right here. She challenged the other snails to try to do better, and Amber could do 5/6 of that 7/8. So Amber is going to do 5/6 of that. So you can see that that is going to be a smaller part than Willie is going to be smaller than Amber, because the model shows that you're taking 5/6 of a number, so you end up with smaller. So in order to find the answer to that, we just multiply across. 7 times 5 is 35. 8 times 6 is 48. So you end up with 35/48 of the yard. They're asking us to compare, this is the distributive property, 1/4 times 2/3 plus 1/5. And here, same thing, 1/4 times 2/3 times plus 1/5. But in this case here, they add these together first. And so they add them together with like numbers, and they end up with 13/15. And in this case, they distribute them. It's the 1/4 times the 2/3 plus the 1/4 times the 1/5. So you end up there and there, and you end up eventually with the same answer, because the distributive property says you can multiply the parts to get the whole, or you can add up the 2 in the parentheses and multiply it by the part. And it's A times B plus C is equal to A times B plus A times C. So A would be the 1/4, and B and C would be the 2/3 and the 1/5. So you end up with the same answer either way. You can do it this way, or you can add them together that way. This is what we did in the very first unit, 4/5 minus 2/3. You do the double rainbow strategy. The top one is times 7 times 7. When you do the bottom, you do the top. You end up with 28/35, and this is 10/35. You subtract those, you end up with 18/35. They're asking us to evaluate this expression, which just basically means solve the answer. 1 1/5 turns into 6/5. 6/5 times 5/6 is interesting here. If you look for the cross cancel, there's a double dash slash. 5 and 5, you can divide those both by 5, and 6 and 6. You divide them both by 6, it ends up being 1 times 1 over 1 times 1. And that is just the same as 1. If you see numbers like this, 6/5 times 5/6, those are called reciprocals. And if you multiply a number by its reciprocal, their answer is always going to be 1. And the reciprocal is just the flip. So when the denominator and numerator flip upside down, it's the inverse and ends up with 1. Manuela has a bag containing 3 3/4 cups of sugar, and she uses 1/5 of it. So here I've drawn my model. This is the 3 3/4 cups, and I've taken 1/5 of it. And this looks like an area model to me. So area means length times width. So which equation shows me how much sugar she used? X is going to equal 1/5 of 3 3/4. Now to solve this, you multiply 3 3/4 times 1/5, and let's do the parts times wholes plus parts. That turns into 15/4 times 1/5. You look for the cross cancels here. 5 goes into 15 3 times, 5 goes into 5 once, and you end up with 3/4. So Manuela has used 3/4 of the sugar. Seth's route to school is 1 3/10 miles long. I've drawn a number line. He has walked 4/5 of it, so I've drawn another number line on top showing 4/5. So that is 4/5 of 1 3/10, and of means times, so it's going to be times, which is going to be, sorry I didn't unpack the problem, how much farther does he need to go to, how much farther? So if he's gone 4/5 of the way, he needs to go this much. So we need to figure out what that is. So first, it's a two-step process. First, we need to figure out what is 4/5 of 1 3/10, and then we have to subtract that number from that. So let's see, 4/5 mile so far. Oh, I'm totally wrong. He's gone 4/5 miles. It's not of at all. So 4/5 plus some number, x, will equal 1 3/10. So it looks like we're going to use that equation right there. So let's find out 4/5 plus x equals 1 3/10, or 1 3/10 minus 4/5 will equal x using inverse. So let's find out what is 1 3/10 minus 4/5. So I line up my wholes and parts. I use a common denominator, which is going to be 10, because 5 goes into 10 twice, so it's a double rainbow. Times 2 times 2. I end up with 8/10 and 3/10, so I don't have enough tenths. I need to regroup, rename this, go to the parts store, and so I'd have 3 plus 10 is 13/10 minus 8/10, so I ended up with 5/10 more to go, which can be simplified to a half. So it looks like Seth has a half a mile more to go. Work hard, ask questions, use it step by step, and view examples. This is practice, but practice makes perfect.